A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin, as always, in the name of Allah, whose grace I seek in this and in all other matters. Today I want to talk a little bit about the takfiri factor. When you do work that is not along the lines of the more conservative, hegemonic, patriarchal, binary understanding of Islam, and you do that work in a place where there starts to be some public attention to it, there are all these random people that come along and want to make an attestation with regard to your faith. Now, in the work I've done over several decades on gender, this really troubled Muslim women activists in particular, and I wanted to respond to this because actually someone had asked me about it. So I'm going to talk a little bit to those people who receive these kinds of statements, and I want to make what I consider to be an assessment of the kind of people who would make these kinds of statements, because of course, you know, it's an interesting kind of dialectic. So I want to start with the kinds of people who will make this, because I think it's important to bring that into perspective before trying to encourage people to move beyond it. Now, the Quran is very explicit about not making false witness, and in fact, there is a corporal punishment that goes along with it. Often, people restrict this only to certain areas of sexual misconduct, and that's fair because that's the context in which it was mentioned. But the point is the false witness, that is to say something about someone that is not true, and especially to advertise it out in the public. So what's interesting to me is that people will talk about other people's faith. I myself have had this happen to me on numerous occasions, including in the comment section to some of my currently posting of the YouTube videos. People will make statements about my faith, and it doesn't bother me as much as it used to a long time ago. So I do feel that there's a trajectory on this, and I think it's important to think about it. But first of all, people talk about your witness, that is your shahada, your capacity to be able to assert the statement, I bear witness there's no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the prophet of Allah, that is the minimum requirement of faith. And people will make statements with regard to your witness, and they don't know you. In my case, most recently, people have made statements about my faith on the basis of 3 words. So it is a very simple habit. It is also the kind of thing that, if you think about it, the Islamic State, the so-called Islamic State, or Daesh, it's the kind of statement that they make when they rape Yazidi women. They will say, well, you know, Yazidis are not really Muslim, so we can rape them. There's a long conversation that can happen about that. But I just want you to see how heinous is the logic and what kind of destruction and harm can come from it. But at the level at which I'm talking about it is only with regard to the accusation. So they don't have any evidence, or they've got minimal evidence, or really what they have is a perspective on Islam with which those 3 words, or my mere existence, or my advocating for equality or dignity for all persons no matter their sexual location and identities, their idea of Islam is not the same as my idea of Islam, and as a consequence, they think that their idea of Islam is the one that should hold sway. And if I disagree with them, which I do, then they feel that they have the right to be able to question my entire faith. Well, the simple response to this is, no, I don't believe in your Islam. And that's finish. But the complexity of this is that, as I have said earlier, who has the power to assert a definition of Islam and to put that definition into implementation will control how other people, in fact, practice. But this overlooks the fact that the goal of my Islam is my surrender to Allah. That is, in Islam, we believe that there is a direct, unmediated relationship between every believer and Allah. And yet there are people who will come in between you and Allah. They will define what that relationship between Allah should be like, hopefully according to what it is that they are best able to practice it. And then they will assert that your actions, your words, do not align with their definition of Islam, so therefore you are out of Islam. But they don't seem to have any consciousness of what this means. What this means is that they prioritize their definition and their person over Allah. So if I focus my attention on my relationship with Allah, and in that process, I study and I do social justice work and I teach and I raise my family and I interact with people in my community and I earn my living. If everything that I do in accordance to my relationship with Allah, how is it that someone can come in between me and Allah and not only make an assertion, but also actually make statements about damnation? You know, you're going to go to hell and, you know, this kind of thing. So there is a particular kind of personality that will do this kind of thing. Obviously, Daesh is one of those kinds of personalities. But in the context of social media, there's also a lot of people who are attention grabbers. They want to get attention, and so they jump in on an issue. They don't know the person. They don't know the context even of the discussion. For example, those 3 words. Nobody wants to follow an actual previously posted blog to see what the whole context of the conversation is. They don't know anything about my life. They don't know about, for example, having a son whom I named Khalilullah, which is a laqab or a nickname in the Quran for the Prophet Ibrahim. But instead, they just know 3 words. So on those 3 words, they want to, take me to hell and back. So be very careful when you make these assertions, because basically you're saying that your opinion is more important than Allah, and that if another person, that is the person you're accusing of being a kafir, does not hold your opinion as more important than their relationship directly with Allah, then that person should somehow respond to what you say and be intimidated. Well, the reality is that Muslims who are working on issues of social justice are often far more sensitive about their faith, about their relationship with Allah, about their Islam. And so when they hear these things, they do find them to be intimidating. They do want to be able to make an impression on the community that they are trying their best with regard to their understanding of Islam, and that they're trying their best before Allah. So they do tend to be intimidated by these kinds of statements. And what's interesting is that the level of caution and concern that they have is actually way more than the people who are making the accusations. Because when you are in an active faith relationship, you realize that faith is not static. You also recognize within yourself that you have moments of doubt and misgiving, and that out of the humongous intellectual corpus that is our legacy, that is, knowledge about the hadith, and knowledge about the Quran, knowledge about the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then fiqh, and then philosophy, and then tasawwuf, that all of these fields of knowledge are vast and extensive, and you recognize that you don't have purview over all of these. Sometimes I find activists will say, well, I'm not a scholar, and then they want to kind of like down themselves before they make a statement. So they're sensitive to, they're aware of, they're conscious of the complexity of this, So they are being super careful. And because they're super careful, they also are super vulnerable. They're super vulnerable to people who will assert that, how can you say this because you're not a scholar of Quran? Of course, I am a scholar of Quran, but this is the kind of thing that comes out there. Or they're super aware of their location within their community. That is, they're concerned that their families might think that by stepping outside of what it might be the normative, conservative, patriarchal, hegemonic, dualistic way of thinking and being, that when they step outside of that, that somehow that they may be ostracized even within their own families and communities. So they're super sensitive to this. So I think the sensitivity to even being charged with going outside of the faith or being, attacked by the takfiri accusations. I think the sensitivity towards it is a good thing. Keep your faith close to your heart. Keep your assertions for social justice within the context of Islam, your trajectory as part of your service to Allah. And at the same time, take heart that no one has the capacity to challenge your faith until you yourself say, I don't want to be Muslim, or that I'm not a part of that religion. Because there are a lot of people who actually do that. And the people who actually do that don't care if somebody makes those accusations. So keep up the good work, focus on Allah, establish justice in the community, make your salat and other forms of worship that help to strengthen your heart. Form collectives with people who actually want to be able to promote these notions of justice, equality, and human dignity within the community. And forget about those other people. Thank you. Be sure to comment, like, share, and if you have not, subscribe. By the way, I'm going to be offline for the next 12 days or so you won't get a post next week, but I promise I'll get back to it later.